the Dead Zone in a happy accident. Through looking for some other underlying rights for another work, for another project, I stumbled across this particular piece because it was owned by the same library. The Dead Zone was an idea that came from this library. By looking at it, I said, wow, this would make a really cool idea for a television series.
Well, the creation of the show was not particularly unusual as things go in this business. I got a call from my agent, Rob Rothman, who said that UPN had bought a pitch from a fellow named Lloyd Seagan.
Dino De Laurentiis had made the movie many years ago as an adaptation of Stephen King's book. And when he made that adaptation and Mr. King sold the underlying rights to do the movie, he also sold and granted the rights to do a television series.
I was not familiar with it, or at least I didn't remember it very well. I remembered there was a movie. And I went out and rented the movie, and I went out and bought the book and looked at it, read it, and called my agent back and said, you know, yeah, and I know Lloyd from conversations. We have the same lawyer. So, you know, I got together with Lloyd, we sat down, we chatted about it.
Michael Piller was the person that I originally thought of to write this, and in fact, at the time, he continues to be partnered with his son, Sean Piller.
Lloyd is a kind of a family friend now, and he and my father and I share the same lawyer and have for years, and Lloyd comes from the feature world and we come from the TV world. And Lloyd he's been a student and fan of television, you know, his whole life, as I've been of features, and it kind of worked out that he found this property, the Dead Zone, that we were fans of, and basically decided to give it a whirl together, and it turned out that it turned into this really cool, sort of unique experience that sort of had this family dynamic on the set and in the development process and the sales process, and turned into a really cool experience.
Michael Piller brought with him the sensibilities that he had been able to produce consistently with the franchise that Gene Roddenberry created called Star Trek. And he brought together his talents on The Next Generation, co-created Deep Space Nine and Voyager. What was common to those shows is not dissimilar to The Dead Zone, creating great characters, great stories, and the ability to take advantage of the great foundations of an underlying work, a beloved author in the case of Stephen King, and to be able to create something wholly original and fresh. And that was the challenge of The Dead Zone, and I hope that we met it.
I had a very clear vision of what I wanted to do very early in the process. I read the book and I said, this book is like a television pilot. It really tells the story of a guy who has to adjust to a whole new life and explore the world that he lives in through new eyes, if you will. That to me was very, very appealing as a writer, because it gave me the opportunity to do what I love to do, what I did on Star Trek, and that's to really explore the human condition. That's what this guy is doing.
Lloyd originally was a fan of Michael's because of a script he wrote, and was a fan of Star Trek, actually, originally. And actually held on to the property when he finally got it after wrangling in some libraries, and waited a year for us to be available from our other deal. And decided that we were the guys to make the show with, and basically we developed it with him and then took it to UPN, which we made the pilot with them, and for political reasons and financial reasons it ended up not going on that network, and then we ended up on USA, luckily, and the rest is kind of the history of the summer.
And I had read a script of Michael's many, many, many years ago and fell in love with it. And it was actually a feature script, because my discipline prior to The Dead Zone had been motion pictures. So when it was time to do The Dead Zone and really bring on a partner who could realize the same passion that I had for it, Michael Piller was the only person I really wanted to do it.
Together we sat down with the folks at UPN. We pitched this vision, which was, the original vision was to say, all right, look, let's take the book as sort of our template. Because one version of the pitch was, we pick up the series where the book ends and Johnny's on the run after killing or trying to kill Stilson, the politician. And it's fundamentally, we've seen that, The Fugitive, you know, and he's the fugitive with psychic powers. Derivative, I felt, didn't want to do that series. But I was interested in the beginning and middle of the book as a template for the first season, using that as sort of our tentpole to build stories week by week that were little chapters in Johnny's life, because obviously a book only has so much time, so much pages to get to those various little stories, but we have a lot more ability to tell those kind of stories.
Basically, I'm in charge of making sure the vision from the scripts gets transferred to the screen. And I prep all the directors, I'm in all the development meetings in the script side, all the way through to the shooting, the post, and the final mix.
One of the great fortunes that we all lucked into was when somebody, and I think it was at Lionsgate, suggested Rob Lieberman. And we sent Rob the script, and he fell in love with the script and came in and described in a 20-minute meeting the vision that he had for this and how he would do this scene and how this scene was going to work. And everything that he was saying as a director were things that I had seen in my mind when I was writing the teleplay.
Well, I was sent a script by Michael Piller, a story by Michael and Sean Piller, and I do a pilot almost every season. And I've had a pretty good track record going into this season. I think I was about 11 for 13, and now I'm 12 for 14 of shows that have gone to series from pilots that I've made. And I look for pilots that I think I can bring something to the party on, and have a certain level of originality. And when I read this, besides being a Stephen King fan myself, this piece of material struck a particular chord with me because, as I termed it, it was the intersection between kind of horror and heart, which are two things that I have an affinity for and a certain, I gravitate to.
Two words: Rob Lieberman. Rob Lieberman is an extraordinary person. He's an extraordinary talent. And he's extraordinary for two reasons. He's one of the few people that I've ever met in my career, and I've had the pleasure and privilege of working with many directors. But many directors that I've worked with have one of two abilities, which is one, to seek out the commercial aspects of a work, or to seek out the artistic aspects of the work. Rob combines the two. His discipline, coming from the worlds of advertising and the artistic community, he himself is a painter, he's a photographer, but he also understands how to sell the message and knows how to pluck the emotional heartstrings and evoke the emotions that this piece needed.
I tried to make it, my approach to it was to make it as realistic as I could, not make it like a genre movie, but make it like a regular dramatic movie. So when I read the script for The Dead Zone, I realized that this was another opportunity to do the same thing. To be able to create not just the typical genre film, but a genre, Stephen King kind of thriller, scary movie. But at the core of it, there would be a great human, emotional content component. And I thought that Michael Piller had rung that bell very well. And I really felt that I could render it really well based on what I had read.
He has an ability, a unique ability in my opinion, to take what's on that page and make it come alive in a way that perhaps even the authors themselves, even me as a producer who had visions reading the script, could never imagine.
Well, I think the changes that we made were made fundamentally to help it be a television series. The book had made decisions that would keep Sarah and Johnny apart. That was really his goal, because he wanted Johnny to go off on a different journey. For a television series, wanted to keep the sexual tension between Sarah and Johnny alive. So I wanted to do things that would bring Johnny and Sarah closer together for the length of the series. And one of those decisions, obviously, was to make the child that Sarah had while Johnny was in a coma Johnny's child. There was no question who I wanted for Johnny. I mean, it was the most difficult casting decision you can make when somebody like Christopher Walken has established that character in a motion picture. I mean, it's akin to what happened with MASH, when you had a great cast of characters in the movie. How do you replace those indelible portraits with other actors? Well, obviously they figured out a way to do it. I felt we needed someone who was off-center like Christopher Walken, but more accessible for a television audience than perhaps Christopher Walken might be, although I would watch a Christopher Walken series. So I had seen Anthony Michael Hall as Bill Gates in Pirates of Silicon Valley, and I said, "Oh, this is a guy who's ready to really make a comeback." And he was first on my list. I'm a little scared about giving his name out to like the network or to other people who are saying, "Well, who's your first choice?" Because they'll always kill your first choice. So I held on to it for a while. The truth is that the first response we got from his representatives was a pass. They said he didn't like the material. I was heartbroken. He didn't like my script, but as it turned out, there was a misunderstanding. We went through the process of casting dozens, interviewing dozens, if not hundreds of actors in his age range, and found a couple that were reasonably good, but I never could get him out of my mind, and ultimately I came back and I said, would anybody mind if I called his agent back? This is weeks later after the pass. Maybe I could have a cup of coffee or something with Michael. Well, I called him Anthony, then I didn't know that he liked to be called Michael. Maybe I could have a cup of coffee with Anthony and he can tell me what he doesn't like and I can fix it. Well, I made the call and his manager said, you know, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Michael hadn't read the script before, but he read it this weekend and he loves it and he wants to do it. So we brought his name to UPN and ultimately Dean Valentine approved it.
Well, I mean, I was aware of Stephen King's books. You know, one of my favorite films growing up was The Shining. I mean, I love Nicholson in that. And, you know, I knew of the film, I had seen it, but I think I was too young to kind of appreciate it. So when I watched it again, I really soaked it up. Obviously, Walken gives a great performance. David Cronenberg is a fine Canadian director, and a director in general. And it was a well-done thing. You know, I wasn't ever going to approach doing that. I don't want to replicate him on any level, or, and I don't think the Pillars had that intention either. But it was certainly our intent to, you know, glean from the book these characters and take the best qualities of what's there. You know, basically the overall structure, and then go in a different direction. And I'm telling you, we've done only 4 episodes. We're about to complete the 4th, and it's been really a ride. You know, as a performer, as an actor.
The audition process was, it seemed like a typical audition to me. I mean, it was around pilot season time, so there were a lot of auditions going on. I had, you know, a few a day. And this was one of them. And I had read the script and thought it was really well written. And of course, I knew Michael Pillar's work from before, from Star Trek. So I was pretty excited about it. And the first read, Michael Pillar was there, and that was nice to see him. And it went well, and it was a pretty straightforward read. And then I got a call saying that I had a call back, and at that point they wanted to have women come in and read with Anthony Michael Hall to see what the chemistry would be like. And I think that was really the one that cinched it, because that's so important, is to see that chemistry between 2 actors in a room. And when I finished doing the scene with him, I thought, wow, that felt so great, and I hope that they thought that. And they did.
Well, it was difficult because I had to, you know, do the exact scene that somebody else had already done when we did reshoots. And she was a lot, you know, tougher than, let's say, that I've been playing her. So I was sort of, had to be a little bit more tough when I was doing the reshoots at the beginning of that had been originally written for somebody else, and so that was tough. I definitely tried to make it my own, but there were certain things that really couldn't be changed, just to keep, you know, continuity of what was going on with the other characters and how they, you know, were responding to her. And but no, I definitely don't mimic people. You know, I make it my own and do my own homework and, you know, make her own history. And I'm sure the history that I made for Dana was completely different than what the other girl had made.
The other was the first meeting, sort of exploratory meeting, was very old Hollywood. It was suffused with courtesy, genuine respect on all our parts toward one another. They knew my credits, not just the things that Michael and I, the Star Trek that Michael and I did, but the things I had done in the prior 3 months, some things that were upcoming, they'd done a kind of research that is extremely uncommon in this business, and I felt prized in a way that most actors don't when they sit down in any meeting these days. It was very old Hollywood.
From the outset, it was something that was mentioned to me by Lloyd Segan, who's one of our executive producers, that we would really create a family environment on a set, and he was right. It really has been that. I mean, Michael's a really nice man, very kind, very down to earth, and you know, in the television business, he's very respected as a showrunner that's trusted and, you know, respected in the industry, and that's everything in terms of a television network. They want to know they can rely upon a creative producer that can really deliver the goods, and he's had so much success with the Star Trek series, and even going back to Simon & Simon and all these things. It's great to know you're in great hands like that, and that the scripts keep getting better, and they really do. And so it's very encouraging, and it makes me feel great about what I'm doing.
Well, we start with the treatment. The treatment is usually between 6 and 10, maybe 12 double-spaced pages. And the goal that I try to set for the writers for the treatment is to simply get a grasp of the outside of the story, the beginning, middle, and end, the character's journey from beginning to middle and end, and don't try to solve all the problems. Don't try to get all the details in that story. I don't want to read the details. I just want to know your goals as a writer for each story.
Basically, a story break is it's really the second part. People think of it as sort of the middle of the beginning of the process, but it's really sort of the middle. You come up first with an idea, either by a pitch or someone has an idea that excites them, and then you sort of talk about it, kick it around, just in general. And then it's assigned to a writer, or either one of the staff writers or a writer that pitched the story. And they go away and sort of write a 10-page, 5 to 10 page treatment. It's really a sales document that we use to sort of do the broad strokes of the story. So then it's time for the story break. And basically the story break is a bunch of guys sitting at Pillar Squared in the writer's room, and we do it on a big whiteboard.
Okay, any comments?
Is Johnny left out of that last thing? Because they all run out of the room?
Yeah, he can't.
Nobody wheels him down there, or is it?
So the story break is once we have the treatment the way we want it, and it's approved by the studio and it's approved by the network, that's when we meet as a group with the whiteboard, and it's really literally a whiteboard, and we put up beat by beat, act by act, exactly what every scene in the show is going to be. The idea is simply now, as a group, to use this sort of group wisdom and experience to try to do a great roadmap for each episode.
Where does that go? Where does that get us?
Well, it gets us into the genuine mystery of what's going to happen. Once strange things are happening here, I think that essentially these women start getting scared. They start feeling like maybe they're in over their head. They want to get out, but it's not so easy to get out.
I try to tell every writer, freelance writer who comes in, before they leave, that this is not a Bible. You are not required to follow this verbatim, because if you get into the show and you're writing it and inspired and the board says you should turn right, but in your heart all your characters are telling you want to turn left, you got to turn left. You got to go where the characters go. It's not a test to see if you can follow the board in your script. I'm going to judge the script on whether it works or not, and whether it has the ability to move me and has power and drama.
Just strengthens him to let him just say it.
Absolutely. But we didn't. The way we originally
What I said from the beginning is that the template for the show is that it has to have Stephen King macabre. It should have humor. Every episode should have some level of humor to it. Every episode should have some level of heart, human emotional depth to it. And every episode should have something really visually stimulating, at least one, if not a number of things visually stimulating. Because the way I look at a film, whether it be an hour television show or a 2-hour movie or even a commercial, my sense is that every moment you're watching it, I, as the film director, say to myself, am I hooked? Is it holding my interest? Do I want to stay here? Am I waiting for the next moment? The best movies I've ever seen are the ones that you sit down, you blink, and they're over, and you go, oh no, it's not over, is it? Oh no, come on, you want to keep going, and you didn't even see it go by. You so immersed yourself in the flow of the stream of consciousness of the filmmakers that you've lost yourself in it. And not a lot of movies do it, but when it's done, I find it amazing, and that's my goal in everything I do in film.
The notion of the writing being of such an elevated level, and more to the point, I would say, is that there's a kind of integrity to this writing. It does not go for cheap effects. There are wonderful special effects in this, don't get me wrong, but they're to illuminate the heart and the mind, and offer us a kind of comprehension and the notion that no matter how distant we feel from people, how shockingly distant, we can have positive effects on them.
Johnny agrees finally, in the midst of all this terror, horror, mystery, and for his own survival, to at least see what the hell this is all about to the best of his ability. And Act 4 explodes.
A lot of things happen in the story break that you can't really anticipate. That's where really the magic happens. When you start to basically write the script in beats, in shorthand sort of bullet points, you start to see, whoa, this isn't working, or the logic of this isn't working when you're talking about how it's going to be blocked, and how you're going to basically, get from the teaser to Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Act 4. So you start to see things like, your act ins, your act outs. You start to see, you can really sort of mark and watch the character arcs, and you can sort of look at the board and say, okay, there's not enough Bruce in the story, there's not enough Sarah, or we really want to have something scary here, so we should move it from there to here. And it's just a good way to sort of see the whole living, breathing story.
The most important piece of advice I give to any new writer who comes into the room is that this room is safe. It's a very important lesson to learn. You must not be afraid to make a fool of yourself during a story break. You might have the worst idea I've ever heard, but it might give you an idea that might also be wrong to solve a problem we're trying to solve in a script, that generates you to have an idea that ultimately solves the problem and moves us on to the next beat. That's how it works. It's a group dynamic.
It's very supportive, and what you're doing is you're basically giving all of your best ideas. Everyone in the room knows what it's like to be the writer who then has to take this thing and go write it, and they have to sit alone in a room and write this sucker. So really the goal is to say, okay, here's a roadmap that is just, that's all it is. It's really a roadmap. It's here, point A to point B to point C, and you keep going. The writer then has to put the heart and the soul and that magic in it, and has to make the characters come alive, and the dialogue, through dialogue and stage direction and everything. But ultimately, it's a very supportive, safe place to disagree or to agree, or at the end, maybe agree to disagree. And obviously, Michael's the tie-breaking vote. And if you've seen our logo, you know that sometimes, he has to, cast the vote.
I don't know how to do what you want to do without making it so confusing that we have to stop and turn to the audience like Hitchcock did and explain, what we just saw.
Michael Piller comes from the Star Trek, Deep Space Nine background of really intellectually mind-challenging storytelling. And this episode I'm doing is a terrific mind screw that you can't quite figure out till the final moments.
As I always say, a feature film director starts with what I call an empty canvas. So if you compare him to a painter, there it is, he's got a white canvas and he starts his painting. When you're a television director, you're coming to something that's established. So the painting's already started. It's your job to sort of make sure that it stays within range of what the show's about. So at that point, what you have to do as a director, you still have to put your input in, because that's why they're hiring you. They don't want someone just to come in and shoot the script as it is. They need someone that can come in and help them make a better product. So that's really your job as a television director. In this particular case, David Benz, who wrote the script, a young writer who wrote the script, and Michael Piller are the two kind of producer writers that let you get involved. They're very open, and I guess that's what I'm getting to. As a director coming in, you either have producers that say, here it is, shoot it, you know, or you have the producers that are open to suggestions and let you sort of, you know, be part of the process. And they've been very accommodating that way.
I think the thing that inspires me on this show most is the fact that we have great writing. I have great admiration and respect for Michael Piller. And the fact of getting good scripts with really exciting and interesting concepts to design sets from really helps a lot. We did one show called Enigma, which I had to recreate the Stage Door Canteen in New York during the Second World War. Now, I was very fond of that script. It was well written. It was a lot of fun to do. But I think one thing that made it exciting for me was the fact that my mother worked at the Stage Door Canteen during the Second World War.
That really comes from the writing. And when you say, hey, we want to do this stop motion shot, or you know, and I reference movies Run Lola Run and other movies, Unbreakable and what's another film? In Dreams, Jacob's Ladder, films that influenced me and Michael and the rest of the writing staff, sort of from a writing and visual standpoint. We take those into account when we're writing the script, so when we get to the production standpoint, we can emulate or, you know, pay homage to those moments in a lot of, obviously, Stephen King films.
When you look at the Bochcos and the Zwick Hershkowitzes and the David Milches of this world, and you look at their work, the police formats have a police story, and then they have a personal story, Sipowitz's story. Or they have a doctor story in ER, it's about a medical issue, and then there's personal stories. So the people are dimensional, and they move along in their lives as well. Well, we've now taken that, I think, very high-grade concept, which, as I mentioned, the Bochcos and the Hershkowitzes and Zwicks and guys like that kind of instituted and placed it on what ostensibly would just be a Stephen King genre show. It would just be a scary thing where he touches stuff and woo, and you know, now we've got real people in that world, and I think that's what makes it so watchable.
I've seen writers have a very difficult time letting go of their preconceptions, and I think it's terribly important in the room to be open to suggestion, to follow leads, not to censor yourself. It is very much related to the very basic ideas that we learned in school to outline stories and to help us have a vision of where we're going. Hey, there are plenty of writers who don't want to know where they're going. And I kind of like, you know, the unknown. But I think that when you have to have a script ready for next Tuesday, it helps if you have an idea what the show needs, and that's what the storyboarding process does.
It takes a fantastic group of artists that are following the lead of a very creative director with very creative producers. And we are fortunate enough in Dead Zone to have all those in the same package. And then when Michael comes in and says, great, I can see what you've done there, let me write for the next episode, the next season, so he picks up on it. And everybody picks up the ball and runs with it a little bit further in Dead Zone. And I think that's what really makes the show so seamless and such a pleasure to work on, because everyone really is contributing to further a collective vision of where this character is going. It's great.
Ultimately, you know, it's between the writer and the word processor to figure out exactly what that script is going to be. But as I said, it's our best shot at giving the writer some company, so it's not such a lonely experience.
had done an episode of X-Files, and on X-Files, I went to the producers of that show and said, well, I have this idea. I'd like to do a shot like they did in The Matrix, where it's called an array camera shot, where they have 120 still cameras set up and something happens that you can freeze, a ball in midair, flames, people jumping, dancing, whatever. You can freeze it and dolly around it like it's a sculpture. And they went and looked into it, and it cost $60,000 and 6 hours of setup time. So that's pretty much a day's work in television and 60 grand to rent the gear and get it set up. They just looked at me and laughed. They went, there's no chance we're going to be able to do that.
No, it'll turn into a special effects show. It just has. I'm trying to save money on the budget. Oh, sure, get on camera saying that. You're so politically correct, Jason.
So I went to my own kind of cerebral drawing board and came up with a plan and a concept for doing it with regular cameras in real time, and it worked. And Bill Millar, God bless his soul, he won the Emmy for Best Special Effects, in part for the stuff I designed with him for this show called Rush for X-Files.
What priority?
So when I interviewed for The Dead Zone, I told him that I had some thoughts on some technique that I had developed for X-Files, and I thought it would apply very well to The Dead Zone, especially the pilot script. And so that's where the jumping off point was. And that was where things freeze and he's able to kind of meander through frozen people and frozen things and kind of examine them like they're just hanging out there in space. That was one technique I used, and then another technique which was ramping up and ramping down, where things kind of ramp really fast. And I had worked with Stargate and Sam Nicholson on 2 other projects prior to this, and he was one of the smartest, and still remains one of the smartest special visual effects guys I've ever met, him and his partner Peter Ware. And they have a couple of guys working for him who are just brilliant. And instead of the special visual effects people kind of limiting this thinking of a director by saying, no, we really can't do that, this is too difficult, that's going to cost too much money, Sam is always a person who says, no, you could do anything you want to do, just tell me what you want to do, we'll get it for you.
Stargate is about 12, 13 years old now, and we began on Highlander 2, the movie. And it's the succession of various companies that I've built for visual effects, and really the goal of Stargate, and the reason it's been a success over the years is because we've always tried to establish new frontiers in visual imagery, coming up with new techniques for shows to expand the palette of filmmakers. We have 2 companies, or 2 branches of Stargate. One is here, the base is in Los Angeles, and we have a sister company now in Vancouver, which is doing Dead Zone. The Vancouver office is dedicated to Dead Zone and has fabulous 3D and 2D artists with Jason Stritch supervising them, also doing the live action supervision. And from here, we do a lot of the producing, budgeting, the original layout of the shows, and we do some of the more difficult items from this office. On a day-to-day basis with the Dead Zone, we stay in constant communication with Jason and the artists in Vancouver. We have a tremendous amount of processing power here in Los Angeles, so many times if it's a very heavy sequence, Jason will design it on the set, work with the directors, then we kick in terms of what we'd call the heavy lifting, in terms of moving a lot of digital data, processing heavy models, using we have a stock footage library that's very extensive in terms of fire, smoke, water, mountains, skies, yeah. And a lot of this is like digital mixing. I mean, you take a shot like Washington, D.C. burning, and it may come from 4 or 5 different locations. We may shoot Washington, D.C., and then we may take the 3D model of the memorial and a lot of the buildings in D.C., and then out of here we'll pull fire, smoke, various elements, do pre-blocking, lay those things in, and do the renders here, and then take them up, and the finishing touches are done in Vancouver. So one shot will kind of ping-pong back and forth. But at the end of the day, it keeps you focused on the character, because we can walk with Johnny into this world when time has frozen. And it's not like a single shot. It's a sequence that goes to this kind of suspended time place, and it allows the visual effects, although they're beautiful, to take a back seat to the drama. And so we really do view ourselves as, you know, supporting characters. We never should stand out and be the principal role. We see visual effects as being completely complementary to the dramatic intent. Rocket, no doubt, it's our chief of security identifying an intruder. Probably another show.
Of course, the battle is always between the music and the sound effects as well. As a composer, they are the enemy. Yeah, special effects people. But actually, on this show, I must say that they're really good, and the sound they have for the flashbacks and everything is very clever. Very clever, and I've always kind of very aware of what they're doing, so that I can work my music in between, because otherwise it just becomes a battle of the faders in the mix, you know. So I always try and, you know, listen to what they're doing and think that's really cool, and leave a little space for the sound of the effect, and then come in with the music afterwards or something. Or if I feel we really need a bang on something, you know, I'll just throw everything on and let them throw everything on, and then you'll get that real moment of just like in the house, for example, where there was the blood coming out of the bath and everything. You know, I was doing the whole Hitchcock strings and like, man, throwing like these big metallic bangs on there, and they were doing their sort of whatever, you know, and it worked out great.
Rob Lieberman is a fabulous director with a great visual sense. His sense and sensibility for visual design and imagery, combined with his dramatic skills, I think really make him a perfect designer-director for this kind of a show.
It's a very simple equation. Rob is the best director I've ever worked with in television. It's as simple as that. He made things happen in that pilot and the second episode that were just remarkable. And he did it, and this might sound like, why does Piller care about this? But he did it cheaply. He found remarkable ways to do things for not a lot of money. For a producer, that's your dream director. He is an extraordinarily talented man, and made a huge difference in the success of this show. The execution, the look, the feel, the tempo, the tone. Rob Lieberman deserves a great deal of credit for all of it.
I'll tell you something about this shot. He touches the TV, we freeze, and then generally we frame drop and come right up to his face, right?
Right.
So we're going to frame drop anyway, we just drop less frames.
All right. 24
frames.
Just go a little slower.
He's shitting frames over here.
Go. Shit for frames. Frames. Brains.
Shoot through the foreground.
Hey, Max, when he touches the TV, you should freeze frame on your side. Copy? Okay, great. Yeah, we'll do it. We'll call it.
Tension is high. They sent a team in through the ventilation system and something went terribly, terribly wrong.
There's a lot of care and attention that's going into that show. You know, the night that we did the graphic shot where we follow the bullet from the SWAT team guy, which is way, way, way off on some mountaintop someplace, and you know, we're following this bullet all the way down, you know, like a ski slope to where it finally ends up. I mean, that was pretty cool. I kind of can't wait to see that stuff. So, you know, just kind of, you have to kind of get into the mind of the computer guys and sort of see it the way, you know, you have to kind of learn what their vision is, and then it's okay. You can kind of just adapt to that. It's not any harder than pretending to be in slow motion, you know.
It's odd with TV. Some people are really into the special effects, and I think that they're very good and they're compelling and they're part of the story. They're not just thrown in for the hell of it. So I think people will watch it for that.
Yeah, there was a lot of technical aspects to the scene where Sarah and Johnny have they reunite, and it takes place outside of the hospital. And it was a very odd thing to do because I was aware that there was going to be some green screen, and I've worked with green screen before, but there was a different element this time in which half the scene would be taking place here, and then although nothing stops in the scene, we're still continuing our dialogue through the wonders of, you know, computers. We're suddenly in Sarah's house, and the scene continues. There's no break in it.
Oh, God, Johnny.
And so we had to do the scene outside, and you know, I don't even know everything, how it all works to this day, but they pulled a green screen behind me partway through, and then I would stand up, and later on you would see my house behind me. It was a very strange thing to do. And then Walt walks in, and we're having a conversation, even though I'm still really there in that moment on the park bench with Johnny. We shot it all outside, and then on another day we took it all to the interior of my house so we could do the whole scene again, but getting the part in the house. And I felt like I was doing a play because I was there with Johnny, but I was there with Walt, and there really wasn't a precedent for this, or I couldn't think of one anyway, so it was sort of new territory, and really I just had to sort of trust Rob Lieberman that this was going to look good, and I think it turned out really well in the end.
When we talk about the technology that's behind these scenes, it's difficult to put your finger on any one technology because we blend many, many different techniques to actually confuse knowledgeable people as to how things are done. And when you take something like, say, the raindrop sequence, it's a combination of shooting what we call wide and fast, which is wider than you would normally shoot and faster film speeds than you would normally shoot. And then we move those different takes together, multiple takes together, where some people are frozen and some people are in motion. We reframe it between different takes. We slip and slide speed curves together, reframing and reshooting the footage and layering it. And we put computer graphics into that with motion track 3D matte paintings that extend structures and change and freeze trees or freeze people if their fabric's moving. So that has to be motion tracked on, and then you layer in three-dimensional graphics of actual computer-generated raindrops that match into real raindrops, and then those things are taken into compositing, and reflection maps are put on them of the entire world, so if you go into a single raindrop, you see the entire world in that raindrop, so you can actually go into a raindrop. Any of those raindrops you can go into, and that whole scene's in them. So it's really, you know, a combination of probably 30 different techniques that are all working in concert with great cinematography and great, you know, ideas behind it. Starts with the idea. And by the time we get to the end of the line, when you look at the finished scene, it's got probably 30 different techniques that are at work in it.
On another layer, there would be this plate, and with Johnny moving in, holding the axe in relatively the same positions that he was moving in the other plate, and then you take it into a program called ER, and you just you blend the two together. You basically trace them, and then the program figures out how to blend them both together.
So you're saying, hey, you know, this requires match move motion control, but we can't have motion control on the set because there is no time. So you start solving one problem at a time, like this fast and wind shooting technique. Then you layer another tech in with like match move CGI, 3D motion tracking. Assuming that technology keeps up its pace and that the software keeps up, and we do a lot of proprietary stuff. You know, then it comes down to processing power and creative minds. You really must say, how are we going to achieve this when it's still on paper, and you have to be right. Because in an episodic schedule, you're not going to have a chance to go back and try to figure it out another way.